For all those of you who are here, if you look to the handsome gentleman labeled Justin Rabinowitz.
Hello, hello.
This is Dr. Rabinowitz. We've known him for a number of years. He'll tell you a little bit more about himself in just a moment, but he's a chiropractor. Justin, you're also I tell everybody that you're a strength coach. You have is a very respected certification. So he not only knows about getting out of pain, but he understands the exercise portion as well. Very well educated individual aside from handsomeness, and he's going to take us through some movement today and some mobility. I'm going to in a moment make him the host, and what I'm going to do is I'll put everybody on mute. Hello, Kim. I'm going to put everybody on mute. That way we don't have to hear anybody breathing or saying anything weird. Hello, Semiramis.
Hey, Rob.
But if anybody has any questions, you could either type it into the chat, or I know sometimes there's like a raise your hand feature. I don't know if I see that right now, but at the very least, you could type it into the chat, and if it pops up, you have a question during it, then Justin can unmute you and ask your question. So I'm just going to wait another minute, see if any of the folks come in late.
Hey, Mark, can you get the dog out of here?
And we probably will get us up and moving at some point. So if you do have some space, even if you have a yoga mat, if you don't, we'll make it work. But if you do, ideally, we can participate a little bit even more. But, we'll make it work either way.
Letting some others enter. And Justin, when I make you the host, hello, Carrie. Hey, you made it. When I make you the host, if you see anybody has to enter, you can let them in, even though they're late. We'll allow that.
Now, do I have to press record once you make me the host? Or
well, I'm already recording. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
All right. Without further ado, I hope nobody has any important comments to make, because I'm going to mute you all now. If you have nothing good to say, I'm not allowing anybody to unmute themselves. Bye-bye. You're all on mute. Good doctor, I'm going to unmute you. Where are you? Unmute the good doctor. I'm going to make him the host.
Rob, you do realize that I was part of the Game Changer family even before you were, right?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
make you the host. Change host, relinquishing my powers. All right, doctor, without further ado, the floor is yours, and you are in control. Listen to the good doctor. Any questions, type it in, and he can answer as we go along. But without further ado, go ahead, Justin, and we shall move.
Yeah. So first, Rob, thanks for having me. So my name is Justin Rabinowitz. I am, as Rob said, a chiropractor, but that's probably the least of what we actually do. We always say at our practice called Strive to Move, we know that people like you, active adults, get frustrated, get basically pissed off that they're injured, but want to be active, want to work out, want to play golf, want to be with their kids and travel and do things like that. And they realize that, they have a knee problem, they have a back problem, that limits them from doing the things that they want to be able to do. And as Rob talked about, because of my background, it allows me to step on both sides, so to speak, to understand the medical side of it and also understand the physical side of it. So our goal is always to make sure that we can coordinate, with your trainers or your coaches to make sure that you're still able to work out and train while we're recovering you from an injury, which a lot of times is how we work with our clients, because they get frustrated that, they've gone to their orthopedist and he said, just don't do anything or don't exercise or don't play golf. And they want to be able to do it. So we're able to live in that world. And that's what we specialize in. We have locations in Warren and in Berkeley Heights. So just to give you a brief background on myself, I actually had back surgery at 26 years old. So as a lot of people kind of question, oh, you don't know what it's like and you don't understand. Unfortunately, I truly do. And, my journey that I take on myself is the same that I understand with the people that we work with, and that, when you don't feel good and you have an injury or pain, it's nervous, it's scary that you might not be able to get back to the life that you want to be able to. So, I'm on that journey all the time currently. It doesn't go away. It's understanding how to manage and to live and to keep pushing through all of the problems that do arise, because we all have something, right? And so that's what we do at our our practice, and it's great for me to be able to talk to you guys and help you be able to live that active lifestyle that you want. So, Rob and I were speaking about this quarantine, and for us, what we're starting to see now, we started to see probably about 2 weeks ago, a lot of our patients started to come back to us to do virtual sessions, because what happened was they were having back pain or knee pain or neck pain or any sort of pain like that, and it was resolved and it was gone. And then what happened is, as we all have found out, our lifestyle has drastically changed. Now, many of you guys are here, so you're still working out. But what we've seen over the past few weeks / month now, and the longer this goes, the longer it'll be present, is that essentially we haven't lived the active lifestyle that we once had, because we can't get away from our houses, so to speak. So the story I use is, typically I wake up in the morning, I do my thing, I get ready for work, I walk to my car, I get in my car, I drive to work, I get out of my car, I get to my office, I'm up in between offices, I may go out for lunch, I come back, I go to the gym, I come back. Within that day, there's a lot of activity and movement that I don't really even think about. And the problem that we're having now is, now I get up, I go to my kitchen, I come back, I sit at my desk, which is 2 feet away. I'm not really outside. I'm not traveling around. I'm not getting up. And because of that lack of movement throughout my day, I'm noticing that my back and my knees and my hips have just gotten a lot stiffer over the past month. So the other thing that I've seen a lot of lately is, over the past week, I've done 3 virtual consults, and the 3 people all had the same symptoms. They all had chronic back pain that for years and years and years, they managed it by going to get massage or get acupuncture or get hands-on therapy, or maybe even go to the chiropractor and get an adjustment. They can't do that right now, right? That's not open for them. And what's happened is, now that they don't have that ability to go and utilize that, they have to figure something else out. Now, what's interesting is, now that they don't have the ability to do those things, those are all great. But what I'm finding out with these people, all 3 of them, is that those were just temporary fixes for them to feel good in the moment, but they never lasted, right? They would feel good for a week or 2, and eventually their pain would come right back. And so I can tell you about one of our patients that we were talking to, and she massaged back and forth, had a baby 4 years ago. And her biggest issue was not getting massage. Her biggest issue was she wasn't strong and stable enough to maintain what she needed to go throughout her day. And so we're working on her with strengthening her core and using her glutes and fixing her mechanics around the house and picking up her 4-year-old son. Going back to work on Monday, she works in a senior center. She's a speech pathologist. So helping her with what I consider to be more permanent fixes of what I think she probably needed all along, but she was always able to manage it because she was able to get the massage and do all those other activities or treatments. So as bad as we've all been this quarantine, and it's not fun for any of us, what I'm finding is we're seeing people that are now actually having to address the root cause of their problem. And luckily for us and for the patients, that's really what we always have specialized in. So nothing really has changed for us. We've always taken that approach as is. So to put it in context for you guys, if you came to me and told me that you irritated or hurt your back doing a deadlift at the gym, I'm not going to rub your back first. I'm going to watch you do a deadlift. Because if I don't correct that, no matter how good I am with my hands, I'll never fix the issue. And so that doesn't change whether we're doing it virtually or we're doing it in person. We're always going to take that approach first. So, one of my takeaways, one of the things I often teach people is this. Step 1 of being injured or having an injury is to not hurt yourself. And that's the hardest part, because we do things throughout our day that we may not even realize are actually hurting or injuring ourselves. So step 1 is not to hurt yourself. And if we can do that, we can make a lot of progress, even with very easy and simple things. So now, after that, if you have a yoga mat, if you have some space, what I want you to do is we're going to start by we're going to start nice and easy. And what I just want to do some, we'll call it stretching, but it's going to be more than that, and I'll talk you through it. One of the philosophies that we have at Strive to Move is that every exercise is a test. Okay, so we're going to start with some basic neck ranges of motion. So I'll put my hat backwards so you can see if you're watching, and I'm going to just make my screen so I can see. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to just tilt your head all the way forward. Now, the first thing that I want to ask is, can your chin get to your chest? If your chin can get to your chest and you have a little bit of a stretch in the back of your neck, that's what we would say is normal. If when you're bringing your head, chin to your chest and you're very stuck or there's a lot of space, that means you have a restriction there. If you feel like when you tilt your head down and one side is tighter than the next or there's pain with that, well, that's not normal, right? That's not a normal thing. Now, I want you to look to one side. So go look to the right. I want you to look to the right and assess how that feels. Then I want you to look to the left and assess how that feels. You can just do it on your screen as I'm watching. Just raise your hand. Does one side feel different than the next? Mine too. So when I turn this way, I have a little bit more tightness on one side. Now, most of us would probably just go out throughout our day and ignore it and hopefully it would go away. What I'm saying is before this becomes an issue, can we at least recognize like, uh-oh, there's something going on here that I'm restricted, that at least I can potentially start to work on it before I have searing pain in my head, neck, or I get a terrible tension headache. So that right there, something very, very basic. If we rotate our head right and then left, and we have a difference from side to side, there's some sort of imbalance there. Now, the big one here is going to be this. As long as, and if you have any vertigo issues or dizziness issues, just be careful with this. What I want you to do now is just look all the way up to the ceiling. This is what usually gets people. So this, in theory, should just feel like a stretch. Probably on the front side of the neck, and I know no one feels it, so actually here. If you're feeling a lot of pinching or pinching on one side, that tells us that there's something going on that's not normal. That's not normal range of motion. Now, a lot of people are concerned because their doctors say, well, the doctor said I have degenerative changes or I have arthritis. One of the early signs of that is not having the ability to look up to the ceiling with no pain. So I see many patients that come to me, and if this is 80 or 90 degrees, they're stuck at about 30 or 40. And that's one of the early signs before taking an x-ray that we can see that you're limited in range of motion. Okay? So again, part of it is we got to, if someone comes in and they have a problem, we got to know where the problem is. And this is how we start to tease it out and assess it. So I'm sharing that with you so that you guys can say, well, my neck doesn't really hurt that much right now, but I do feel a big difference from side to side. So let's I always say, let's know that the car is going to crash before it actually crashes, okay? Now, let's go ahead and do the same thing with our shoulder. So here's what I want you to do. You're going to straighten your arm out. And I always say with the middle finger, I want you to try and just make the biggest circle that you can. Going one direction and then going back in the other direction. Now I want you to do that on your right side, and I want you to do that on your left side. How many people it feels the same on both sides? Raise your hand. Good. How many people have a difference from side to side? Okay. How many of those people that just raised their hand, how many of you actually have shoulder, who would say you have a shoulder problem? Just one or two. So here's the thing, right? There's a difference between having an injury and having something that can lead to an injury. So let's play this out for a sec. Let's say at the gym, you're doing push-ups or bench press or something like that. When you're doing that at the gym, you're asking both of your arms to do exactly the same thing with the same range of motion and the same weight. But we just found out that one arm doesn't do the same as the other arm. So as we can see, something's compensating. Now I know at your gym, you guys don't use a ton of like barbells for bench press, not normally, or do you guys, Rob? Not much barbells. I can't hear you, you're muted, sorry. I got it.
Barbell. At Addison, we don't press with barbells. At Springfield, they do occasionally press with barbells.
Okay.
Not always, but I couldn't tell you how often.
So that's So now you guys can see programming becomes important, right? So I asked him that question because how much worse would it be if your right shoulder and left shoulder are different, and then we put a bar in your hands and are really asking you to do the same thing. With dumbbells, smart programming by Coach Rob there, we understanding that people have differences. If we have a dumbbell in each arm, it allows us a little more freedom of motion and saves some of you from injury. But that's why for me, as I said in the beginning, I can't just deal with the medical side of it. I need to understand training because that stuff matters. Okay, now, if you guys have some space, what I want you to do is either on your yoga mat or your carpet, I want you to go in that hands and knees, that quadruped position, if you can. I'll give you guys a second to get there. Many of you guys have done yoga in the past. This might be familiar. So what I want you to do, I want you to just start moving in a cat-camel. So I want you to round your back all the way, and then I want you to flatten your back or arch your back all the way. And I want you to just go back and forth nice and smooth and try to do about 10 of those. I did this about a week ago with a CrossFit gym, and the one guy had on AirPods, and I didn't get to mute him, so he put him in an arch and then a flexion, and all of a sudden I hear, because his back was shot. But here's the thing, okay? So we're getting your spine, we're stretching your spine into end ranges of motion. So how does this feel? It should feel like a stretch. If this feels like a pain or a pinch, there's something going on there, right? So I know personally when my back isn't great, when I flex all the way, it doesn't feel so good. When I arch all the way, it doesn't feel so good. I want to know that your spine can get into those stretch positions without discomfort. Now, here's a drill we're going to do. Check it out. So watch me do it once. I'm going to do 3 movements. I'm going to round my back once, as far as I can. I'm going to arch my back once, as far as I can, and then I'm going to find the middle position. So watch, I'll do it in real speed. Round, arch, middle. Everyone, let's do that a couple times. Round, arch, middle. Round your back all the way, arch your back all the way, middle. When you find the middle position, I'll talk you through what you should be feeling. When you're in that middle position, you should feel your abs working a little bit. Your abs should be turned on a little bit. Now, how many of you guys just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Does this feel, that middle position, does that feel like a normal position for you? Is that a position you've been in before? Good, excellent. Now, the next question I have for you, when you're at the gym and you're doing a squat or a deadlift, is that the position that your spine is in? So let's test this, right? So I'm going to arch once, I'm going to round once, I'm going to find the middle, my abs are working. Now I'm going to just sit my hips back to my feet, maintaining that core position. So I'll show you from the front. I'm going to arch, I'm going to flatten, I'm going to arch, find neutral, sit my hips back with my abs working. So let's just do that about 10 times. So find neutral, sit back and come forward. Sit back and come forward. Good. Good. Find that neutral, sit your hips back. If this feels good, normal to you, that's a good sign. This right here, my friends, is what you should be feeling when you do a squat. So if you're telling me, well, this doesn't feel like the normal position I'm in when I'm squatting, and I don't feel like my abs are working this much when I'm squatting, you're putting your spine at risk. Now, the good news is if you fix this, you're helping your back immensely. The bad news is once we go to a standing position, we add weight and we get tired and all these different factors. If we're not activating the way that we should, we're putting ourselves at risk, okay? So that position that we just found, that rounded, that arched, and in the middle, that's a neutral spine. Neutral spine is the name of the game. Back injuries, whether you're going to deadlift a weight, squat a weight, whether if any of you guys golf like I do, if you don't keep a neutral position, that's the way you're going to hurt your back, right? So I'll show you an exaggeration of this. So we have people that come and squat with their back really arched and they squat down this way. Well, that's going to crush your back. If you're really rounded and you do that, that's going to really hurt your back. But if I can find neutral, then I have a good shot at keeping my spine. So now let's get everyone standing. And I want to try the same thing, okay? So so now this is going to be significantly more challenging for you standing up than it was in the quadruped position. So I'll be closer so you can see. So I'll tuck my shirt in. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tilt my pelvis backwards all the way. I'm going to round my pelvis all the way. I'm going to find a neutral position. Then from there, I'm going to try my squat and hold that position. If you feel like your back is arching on the way down, then we're getting out of neutral. Your abs should be turned on. Your back should be nice and neutral. You feel your abs engaging. I just got off a session with somebody who's had 7 years of back pain. And this is exactly what we're working on. Every single time she gets into exercise or goes into a squat position, she gets stuck in this position here. And eventually her back spasms on her. And so we have to work with her, breaking down all of her exercises and movements to get her back into a neutral position so that she can squat and she can deadlift and she can lunge from that position. Okay, so this stuff matters. Physical therapy, injections. She actually got referred to me by a pain management doctor who didn't want to do more injections because he didn't think it would help. Exactly this. So I'm starting to. So for you guys, this is huge, huge, huge. Does anybody have any questions on that? Rob, do you have any feedback? Do you see that a lot? People a lot of times we see a lot of people get arched a lot in the gym.
Yeah, some people try to arch too much. That's where I see a lot of back issues.
Yeah. So something else to start to think about, guys, is as you start to go to the gym, and now if you can feel these positions, it's going to start to really, really help. What might happen, though, be careful, as you get fatigue and as you do more reps, even if you initially were doing it correct, eventually it might go away. It might be more challenging. So we're teaching you the basics today, but long term, we've got to make sure we can do it in a lot of different scenarios. All right? Now, I want to test some hip stuff, okay? So we're going to go into what I call a 90-90 position. So here's what it looks like. I'm going to be 90 degrees with my leg, and then I'm also going to be 90 degrees with my back leg. And let's everybody get into this position. I don't care which side you start with. We'll do both sides. Now, this isn't a yoga pose, so the leg isn't curled in. We're not in pigeon, okay? We're at 90-90. So right leg out, left leg here. Push your bottom. Lisa, does pushing your bottom out reduce arch in your squat? We'll talk through that. Let's go through it, and we'll go through questions at the end. But yeah, if you guys have questions you want us to get to, throw them in the chat, and then we can open it up at the end, and we'll go through all of it because I want to make sure I answer them for you. Okay, so we're in this position, all right? So you see the logo on my shirt. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a stretch here, but watch. Don't do this. My logo is not going down toward my knee. My logo is coming towards you, towards the camera. I'm going to start to lean myself forward. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to stretch the back of my hip whilst keeping myself neutral through here. As opposed to rounding my back out or arching my back out, I'm going to start to lean forward, and what you should feel is a stretch in the back of that right hip, and you should not feel back pain with this. So just start moving forward, keeping your back neutral. You're going to stay up tall, and you're going to lean forward. Tall, lean forward. You can keep your hands on the ground. You should feel a stretch in the back of this right hip. If that's really easy for you, push your knee down hard into the ground. It'll activate your glute a little bit. You should not feel back pain with this. So I'm sure you guys have done, Rob, you've done the dowel drill with them, like with the neutral spine type thing?
I don't have dowels. Not specifically with most people with a dowel, not specific.
Keeping them neutral, they know that concept?
Yes.
Okay, so check it out, right? So this position, the rules don't change, right? So if I'm deadlifting or I'm in a 90-90, the rules don't change. So if I had a dowel or a golf club, whatever I've got, I'm still going to be in a neutral back position, and I'm still going to lean forward, and I'm going to maintain that. I'm not going to round my back. I'm not going to round my head. Okay? So that's the visual here. Now, let's go switch sides. So I'm going to go left leg forward. The first thing that I want you guys to recognize is, first of all, do I feel different from side to side? One of the things that you might feel, oh, that was my fault. One of the things you might feel, breaking the furniture, my wife's going to kill me. One of the things you might feel is that on one side, you can be upright and be neutral, and then you get to the other side, and you feel like you're going to fall over. That means that you've got a hip rotation problem. But it's most important that we figure this out, okay? So let's try to get us in this position, and let's work towards the other side. Hey, Bernie, bring your left leg back a little bit, so if you can. Yeah, that's it. Good. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Good. Good. And lean forward and lean back. Lean forward and lean back. Your leg might cramp with this a little. That means it's probably good for you. It means you haven't done it enough. Coach Rob, you're rounding too much. Stay tall. I got to correct you too. Jesus. Didn't think I had to worry about you, but I do.
It's very tough for me. I'm very limited here.
Yeah.
Okay, I know a neutral spine is a happy spine. I say it all the time.
Sure. All right, now, let's do this. So I want you guys in a position where your feet are about 30, 40 degrees out here, and your toes are up, your heels are down. We are going to start working what I call a little bit of a flow exercise. So hands are behind me, and what I want you to do is just start working your hips down in one direction and then down in the other direction. And again, it's an exercise, but it's a test. So if you feel one side significantly different than the other, that's a problem. Just start moving a little bit. Let your hands work. You're doing great. Looks good. Keep that spine neutral. Keep that spine neutral. Good. Last thing, and then we're going to open up for questions. We'll do a nice Q&A at the end. Last thing you're going to do, if you can, let's just make it a little more challenging. So you get to this position, arms out. Can you stand up tall, or can you sit up tall? Good. Hands behind you. Switch sides. Can you get to the other position? Hands out straight. Can you balance here? Now, extra credit, do the whole thing without hands. If you can't, don't worry about it. If you can, good for you. That's great. Excellent. Perfect. Good. Nice job, guys. Now, we'll open it up for Q&A. That was about, believe it or not, 30 minutes of movement. We worked through some neck ranges of motion. We worked on shoulder ranges of motion. We worked on some spine mechanics, finding neutral spine with core. And we worked on hip mobility exercises. Now, the difference between this and is notice how focused we were on making sure that your core was in a good position while you were doing the mobility drills. That's the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to have. A lot of times we will put ourselves in this 90-90 position or something, and we'll be real arched forward, or we'll be round in a position here, and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. We're not stretching our hip the way we want, and our spine's working too much. The other big takeaway that I have is making sure that you do some of these assessments. Don't ignore this stuff. Just because you're not in pain, we always say pain is the last straw. That's usually by the time things have really gone wrong. And what we find with a lot of people is that the longer things stay around, typically the longer it is for it to go away. So the patient that I was working with this morning, she's had back pain for like 7 or 8 years. So it's a long road to recovery. We're going to get there. I'm confident of that. But your body kind of just learns, right? And the other thing that happens is when you've had a problem, or when you've recovered from an injury, or maybe haven't recovered properly, is your body learns how to compensate, right? So let's just say you had a back problem on the right side and the pain went away and you recovered. Well, then your left hip gets a little tight as compensation. And then you get back into exercise and you start exercising and you never fix that left hip. And then you realize that you're putting more pressure on the right. And then you wonder why your right knee hurts. And that's the stuff that we always see, and we're trying to play detective to figure it out. You know, if you came to me with lower back pain, the last thing I'm going to look at is your lower back. I'm going to look at your hips. I'm going to look at your knees. I'm going to look at your thoracic spine, because I want to figure out what the problem is and where the pain's being actually generated from. I'll give you an example. One of my buddies is a golf pro at Plainfield Country Club, and he texted me saying, I have a labrum tear in my hip. Do I need surgery? So I said, I haven't seen you, but I don't think so. Typically, we don't have to do it. He went to get a second opinion. The second opinion doctor said, not only do you not need surgery, but I don't even think the pain is coming from your torn labrum. You have bursitis in your right hip, and that's probably what's causing the pain. So again, if you've had images or x-rays or MRIs, so for me, now that I'm going to start working with him, I have to make sure he's a golf pro. So I understand the movements that I have to make sure that we get rid of inflammation, but more so make sure his hips are strong enough. He has mobility. He's getting range of motion from the other parts so he can take some pressure off of that area. But don't just think because you've had an MRI report or you've had an x-ray or doctors told you this and I'm just gonna have to live with it. I don't know. I always say, let's have a little bit more positivity than that. I'm too stubborn to just believe where some people are always going to be in pain. There's so much that we can do. If you guys have gone through a lot of this, if you have gone through this and have seen that there's a difference or there are some issues from side to side, there's good and bad news. The bad news is you got some stuff to work on. The good news is that there's a lot of stuff to work on. I always tell my patients that. If you've had a problem, a chronic problem, and we find these range of motion deficiencies and some of these little weaknesses and some areas that are too sticky or too loose, then that's good news for me because that's a lot of things I can fix. And when we start fixing those things, you start feeling a heck of a lot better. So I wouldn't be afraid of any of this. I'd actually use it as a sign that potentially there's things you can do and you don't have to live with that nagging back or nagging knee or nagging neck or shoulder. So, Rob, I had a lot of questions here that we'll go through and then people can jump on. I mean, you tell me, you're the boss.
Yeah, I'd say let's go. Anybody who asks a question, I see 3 of them here. I think you said Lisa asked one. Why don't you go through the questions? Yeah. And anybody else who has one, you could put it in there. And yeah, if anybody, I guess you can unmute the person, Justin, while you're answering their question, if you could find them, and they could ask a follow-up if they want.
Yeah, I think you still have muting capability. I don't, so I'm trying to unmute Lisa and she's not unmuting. Can you unmute her?
I'm unmuted.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Tell me so you asked, does pushing your bottom out reduce arch in the squat?
So you were talking about the neutral in squats. This is it's specific to squats. Yeah. It's actually about my husband. So getting that correct positioning and making sure your bottom is out and back, you're kind of back on your heels. Will that help avoid the arching in a
It will. However, can I show you something?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the biggest things that I see, and this is, if you take it, I actually did this with the last patient too. This is huge. So she was always taught that you want to keep your chest up when lifting, right? We've all heard that. Keep your chest up, keep your chest up. That works sometimes, not always. So let me show you.
Yeah. Yeah, so not every squat's the same.
Well, squat versus like, Rob, you guys, what do you go, RDL, deadlift, those terms? Okay.
Yeah, so, RDL or hinge. Usually RDL, we say.
RDL, hinge, deadlift. So there's a difference between a squat and a deadlift, but let me show you why. And this is why this cue can work, but only sometimes. So if you're so remember, the goal of our spine is to keep in a neutral position. The goal of our spine is not to keep our chest up, okay? That's the big difference. If you're squatting, if you sit your butt down, yes, to stay neutral, your chest will be up, okay? However, if you go to do a deadlift or a hip hinge, watch what happens. I sit my butt back. If I keep my chest up, I'm arching my back. So I'm out of neutral, right? So remember, the goal is not to keep your chest up. The goal is to keep your back neutral.
Right.
So this stick, golf club, dowel rod, doesn't matter what you got. This is a nice visual for it, so watch. The goal is to keep it connected to you the whole time. So head, middle back, lower back. If I squat and keep my chest up, that works great.
Right.
If I hinge, my chest goes down and now I'm neutral. As opposed to if I do this, now I'm arched. That's not what I want. The goal is neutral. So whether I'm squatting, deadlifting, lunging, that's the position that we want you in. So if you push your butt back or you sit your butt down, that's less important to me than making sure we find where a neutral position is and we stay there.
That stick is a great visual.
Yeah, we use that a lot. We use that with my golfers. We use that with my lifters. It's a very nice visual to make sure, because I don't teach people to push their butt out or sit their butt down or whatever. I just say keep neutral. If you know how to do that, you'll know how to put yourself in a position for the exercise.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, that's another thing. Long term for us, what I always say in our office is that we're trying to get you to the point where you can essentially be able to understand the positions yourself, where like if you were at home and trying to lift something up, that you don't need Coach Rob saying, stick your butt back, stick your chest out. That hopefully long term what we do, or what someone like Coach Rob can do, is make everything else in your life a little bit better. So that deadlift motion, if you're going to pick your kid up or your grandkid up, it's the same thing, right? So we want to teach you these moves so you have them for life, right? Z. Hi, Z. Rob, what's Z's real name?
Zrinka.
Zrinka.
Unmute yourself, Zrinka. Be proud.
I unmuted her. Hi, Zrinka. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So tell me, so you get back pain after long walks?
So I take like every morning, I take long walks, like hour and a half.
Uh-huh.
And then my really lower back is really stiff.
Yep.
And if I want to lean down, I'm in pain.
Uh-huh. What about, so, and then it gets better throughout the day?
Yes.
Okay. How do you feel after the workouts that you're doing? Do you ever get any back pain with that?
No.
Feels fine.
Yes.
Okay. So a couple things that I would want to make sure of is that, are you doing any sort of like stretching warm up before or after?
No.
Okay. So like one of the things that I'm finding that, you know, a lot of us either do our activity and we're running around like crazy people before and after. So there's no ability to kind of let ourselves cool down a little bit. So I can tell you that if I go to play 18 holes of golf and I sit in the car and just go on with the rest of my day, I'm going to feel it the next day, right? Because even though it's walking and people don't think it's that serious, you know, your body is still moving. And if you're super stiff afterwards, that's a good indication that we've got to at least do something after, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to go from activity to like, you've basically gone from 100 to 0 and just probably like got home and gone about your day. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing was, all right, so knowing that that's going on, if we cut our walk by 10 minutes and did some of even these basic mobility drills after, could that start to just cool us down a little bit? Right. A couple easy things that you can do is just a nice, easy, like hip flexor stretch, which I like. So when you're here and being up, and again, you've probably done all these before, but it's mostly making sure that you're doing them after you do a long walk, repetitive walk. So spending that 5 to 8 minutes, 10 minutes to do some sort of cool down exercise would be where I would start.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Susan, where's Susan? Oh, Susan, there you are. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I always focus on hip hinge in the beginning of the squat.
So I have tight hips. I had hip surgery as a child. I don't have any pain or anything, but I have a little arthritis. It's been, 40 plus years. So I think I do an exaggerated maybe hip hinge when I squat. And I'm not sure if I'm maintaining neutral or not then.
So you're right in the idea that you want to be sitting your hips back. That's the best thing that you can do. Do you ever get any pinching when you do the squatting or lunging or anything in the front?
No.
Okay, good. Yes. So what I would really, when we did that cat-cow drill and you found neutral, how was that? Is that weird?
No, that's fine. And I do other workouts where you maintain, like bar workouts, neutral's fine. Upright. But it's just the squatting. I'm not sure if I'm maintaining.
I think that looks good. Rob's coached you well. What I think potentially, one of the things to recognize with hips, guys, is that the hip is a ball within a socket. So it's literally your leg bone is connected to your pelvis, and that's a ball that sits in a socket. You have to be able to control both of them so the ball and the socket sit appropriately. So if you're going down into your hinge or your squat and you've lost any position here with abs, you've basically taken the socket and rotated it on the ball. And so I would want to make sure that you are really conscious of making sure that these are turned on, abs are working, you're fully contracted. And one of the best tests for all of us to do, where most people generally fail in the beginning, if you go into your squat position, your lunge position, your hinge position, and we all took our hands and kind of poked ourselves in the belly, once we poke ourselves in the belly, to know your core is working, your belly should poke back out into your hands. So I'm pushing into my belly, I should push my belly back out into my hands. So now, like if someone punched me, it'll be tight. What I would want to know is, as you go into your hinge, do you maintain that tightness in your belly? Is your abs still pushing out into your hands? And if not, you're losing core tension somewhere. And something's going to have to make up for that, whether it's your hip or your lower back or your knee or something, right? So that's a great test. And that's how, when we start to do rehab or training with people at our office, we start to teach them that. So, hey, you can get into this position where you tighten your abs. That's awesome. That's step one. Step two, can you maintain it all the way through your hinge? Can you maintain it at the bottom position here, where I'm still in a position where I'm using my core when I'm lunging? So then we start to talk about, then that's another conversation, doing ab exercises, but are they actually translating to what we're doing in the gym? So I would make sure, your hinge looks good. I want to make sure that your spine and your pelvis are staying in a position where you're not creating a different issue, because you're right, your hinge does look good. I like that. So does that help at all?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, who's our next one? Help me with the name. Is that I just unmuted you. Help me pronounce it.
Semiramis.
Semiramis, very good.
Yeah.
All right. It seems that I have a hip rotation problem. My left side is the problem. Okay, tell me about that. What happened?
I have no idea. I just was doing the exercise, and then I noticed that I don't have a lot of mobility on the left side, and also I have some pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my left side is all messed up,
Right.
My entire left side.
You notice it when you're lifting at all, or only during when we did this?
I mean, I have some problems.
Mm-hmm.
I have some pains, but I didn't know what it was. And doing the exercise now, I just noticed that it's like all,
tight.
tight and painful.
So one of the things that I would first look into is I would want to look into some of the training, and I would start to maybe see how I can focus on potentially doing some single leg variations. Rob, potentially that might be useful. And what that might do for you more than anything is force you not to compensate, right? So if your left side's tight, maybe there's some muscles that aren't working well. When you're doing a squat, potentially you're imbalanced from side to side. So maybe if we can do some stuff on one leg at a time, maybe a lunge, maybe a single leg hinge, things of that nature, I would want to start there. And the best thing that could happen is you realize, oh, it's really hard on my left and the right is much easier. And that tells us that we might have to spend more time on that. Now, it's one thing if it's challenging, it's another thing if it's painful. And then if it's painful, then we have to start seeing like what's going on. Do you have a bursitis? Do you have a labrum? Do you have a back problem that's referring down? But from a training perspective, I would certainly start there. And I wouldn't compensate around it until I have a firm plan on how to kind of go forward with it. So I would also make sure that when you're doing some stretching or mobility drills, that understanding the difference between pain and tightness, right? So tightness we can deal with and work through, but if it hurts, that's different, So if you have some stiffness and soreness, that's okay, but just don't push through pain. Now, one of the things to think about, especially when you're doing some of these hip drills, so some of these hip drills might be good for you. However, like if let's just say you're doing a stretch for this left hip, if you feel a pain or a pinch on the front of the hip, I wouldn't keep doing it. That means that there's some sort of impingement going on. What you want to feel when you're doing that stretch is a stretch in the back. So if you feel that, potentially you could kind of keep working on it and pushing through. But if it feels like it's painful, I wouldn't keep pushing through. A few other things with that, because every time I give advice in a group setting, I want to make sure that I'm super clear. Obviously, we all have different bodies and different needs, and everyone comes from different backgrounds, and we've all had different experiences. All of the exercises and ideas that we're doing, I'm giving advice that works for 50, 60, 70% of the population that generally is okay. I always joke with people that if YouTube had all the answers, I wouldn't have a job, right? Because you can find every stretch online. And that's super easy. And I tell you that not because I don't want to tell you how to fix it. I tell you that actually for the opposite. I tell you that because I don't want you to be discouraged, right? Because I get so many people that come in that they say, like, I've been stretching on YouTube, or I've been doing this, and I did these back pain stretches, and nothing works for me. And that's not true. It just means we haven't figured out what works for you, right? So not everyone that we see responds to just straight stretching. Some people need stability training. Some people need core training. Some people need other things as well, right? So I say that more so that to encourage you, not to think, well, I tried that, it didn't work. The patient I had today, literally what we did with her today, she had just finished 20 sessions of physical therapy, and I can show you her workout, what we did. What I did today with her, believe it or not, was she sent me her physical therapy program that she was doing that was hurting her. I literally went through her physical therapy program. We did the exact same thing, but we did it correctly, right? So I'll give you an example. And you guys will understand now. She was doing a bird dog. You guys have probably seen that before. We just found neutral spine. She had a back problem. She was doing every bird dog in extension. And so her spine was just locking up. So this exercise that was supposed to be helpful was actually hurting her. You guys in the gym probably might do some lateral band walks, band shuffles. She was doing every band walk in extension in her back. So by the end of it, her low back was fatigued and she felt nothing in her glutes where she should. So all I did with her today, I didn't give her any new exercises. I literally went through her exercise program and did it correctly. And so, again, I'm just saying that to make sure that we all understand it's not about sometimes the exercise. It's about the right one for us done correctly. But just to kind of recap, make sure we're going one leg at a time. Don't push through pain. If it feels like it's maybe not as strong or there's a little balance issue, good. Keep training. Work through it. If it hurts, don't push through it. Your body doesn't like that, right? The other thing, too, guys, if you're in pain, realize that if you're here working with Coach Rob for fat loss reasons or for body comp reasons, if you are in pain, your body will not allow you to do what you need it to do. Your brain and your nervous system is so focused on the pain that you're feeling that it can't spend enough time putting the systems in place to help you lose weight. It's very hard to lose weight. It's very hard to when your nervous system is just trying to deal with that fight or flight pain on stress hormones and all these different things that happen when we're in pain. So one of the potential reasons why we see people that have trouble with this, with long-term fat loss, is because they're dealing with an injury that's unresolved and their body's using everything that can just to kind of deal with the pain, and it can't really focus on doing what it needs to do. So so does that, I know I talked around it a lot, but does that sort of give you an idea of where to start?
Yeah.
So Miriam, I'm going to talk with the good folks at Springfield, and I'm going to mention it to them, and they'll. I know some of the stuff that Dr. Justin said about like focusing on one side at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I notice is whenever I do RDL, for example, if I'm doing, one side and then the other side, when I do left side, I'm okay. But when I'm doing the right side, I have no balance at all. I'm always.
Now we're getting into it, right? So check it out.
Yeah.
So if you and I worked on an assembly line, you and I were working and we were going fast. If I left, I'd be good. I'm not working. I don't do anything. I don't have a problem. You would have a problem because now you're working overtime. Potentially, as we start to peel back the layers, is it that your left side is trying to work extra hard for your right side and it's doing too much? Again, that's where that making sure that we figure it out of what the real problem is becomes super important, right? So that's what you're saying is not uncommon. It's interesting though. Like I was having a wrist thing a couple weeks ago on my left side, and I wasn't actually concerned about my left wrist. I was concerned that if my left wrist hurt, that when I did a push-up, would I eventually strain my right shoulder because my body's trying to use that more and get off of the pain.
And that is funny because usually my left side is the one that I don't have any strength, because on my left shoulder I had frozen shoulder.
Yeah.
I have pain in my left neck, you know, the left side of my neck. I have pain in my ankle because I kind of had a cast when I was, I don't know, 20 years old. So usually my left side's the problem, but I noticed that I don't have balance on my right side, which I and that's where that making sure that you're, because to your point, and as we're talking, like everyone's got a little bit of a different history and things like that, where in theory is it like, oh, do I fix my left side by making sure my right side works properly? And so that's as I start to look at people individually and break it down, that's what we really, really focus on. So definitely something hopefully Coach Rob can talk to them about. But if you need any other more advice, you know, potentially reach out to me for that. Does anybody have any other questions while we're on it? Coach Rob, any other questions? Anything you want me to address?
I would just say if somebody feels like they have a specific tightness in one area and they want to do some kind of mobility exercises to open that side up, how often should they spend on it? Is it like doing a few minutes each day is enough? Should be more time dedicated each night? What's like a good amount of time to spend on a certain area?
Good question. So what I always say is there's no specific prescription. However, the more you do it, the quicker you'll be at an answer. And what I mean by that is typically when people come and ask, I have a tight shoulder or tight hip, what should I do for it? What I always say is I'll give you the exercise or the stretch and you do it for X amount of time, this many times. And then I stop and say, if it doesn't work by then, that's not the problem, right? The people that I see in my office, they're the ones that stretching or mobility didn't work for. That's why they're there, right? If it works, I would have never saw them. So the most important part is if you do it twice a day for 2 weeks, which is very reasonable if you have a shoulder issue and you have no results in that 2 weeks, 2 week period, generally speaking, if you haven't made any change in that period of time, it probably won't change, right? So that's the most important part of this is understanding that, you know, we can do anything. Like I could tell you to rub your back for 10 minutes and if in a week your pain is gone, perfect. But if not, you do it for, let's say twice a day for 2 weeks, once a day for a week and a half, 3 times a day for 10 days, and you haven't made a change, then it's not the right intervention, right? It's not the right intervention. It's like diet, right? If you guys have tried keto and you're like, doesn't work for me. Okay, well then maybe it doesn't work for you, but your friend down the street it did for. Not that keto doesn't work. It's just that that wasn't the right diet for you, right? If Rob and I both were competing in powerlifting, we probably shouldn't have the exact same program because our body types, because of our injury history. Doesn't mean we still can't both get results. It just means that we haven't figured out the right thing. So my answer to that is, you know, generally doing something more consistently, so once to twice a day for a few weeks. However, if it does not work, if you still have tightness, if you still have pain, that's when I wouldn't just keep doing it in perpetually. And I wouldn't also just say, well, that doesn't work for me, I'm going to be in pain all the time. That for me is the biggest, I would say, tragedy is that people just don't do anything because they tried one thing and it didn't work. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
What else? What other questions can I answer?
Anybody have anything for the good doctor before he departs and probably plays another round of golf?
Not today, tomorrow, hopefully.
All right, Justin, well, thank you very much. That was awesome. That was very helpful. I have this recorded, and it's not recorded in the gallery view where you see everybody. It's just recorded on the Handsome Doctor. I'll send out that. We'll upload it like we did last week. We'll upload it, and I'll include Justin's information in case you want to reach out to him.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions or concerns, we're doing complimentary for virtual consults for anyone at Game Changer and the Game Changer family to see if there's anything we can help with. The other thing, Rob, that we're doing, maybe we can send you the link. We're doing a free back pain webinar this Wednesday at 7, I believe, and we're going to go through some assessments that you can do in your own chair, talk through workplace workstation setups. Actually, a lot of the patients I'm seeing right now, the first virtual visit we did was like, all right, show me your workstation. Because most of them, it's like crappy table with desk chair, and it's like 2 days in, it's awful, right? And so again, step one is not hurting yourself. So we're doing that Wednesday at 7, but hopefully, Rob will share my contact info.
Send me the link, and I can include that too.
Yeah,
in the email.
perfect. Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions, feel free to reach out via email, Instagram, follow us on we post new stuff every day. The other thing too is we've been posting on our Instagram micro break tips, which a lot of people like, just kind of things that they can do in their house that's like, hey, here's a stretch that I can do. So that's obviously on our Instagram at Strive to Move. So that's all there for you, free, anything that you need. And then if you have any questions, obviously Rob has my info. He texts me annoying stuff all day, so I'm sure he can text me more annoying stuff.
Yeah, I always text you helpful stuff.
Sure.
I keep you culturally aware of the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on, and I hope all the moms out there have a great Mother's Day tomorrow. Hopefully someone does something nice for you. We're going to actually drop surprise creme brulee French toast at my mom's house. Brownie points there. So that's what we're going to do. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And if you need anything, please reach out. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.